On June 18, 2020, a team of accountants sat in a glass office tower in Munich, staring at a number that shouldn't have existed. 1.9 billion euros. Gone. Not stolen in a heist, not lost in a bad trade. It had simply never been there. For years, one of the most trusted financial technology companies in Europe, a company regulators defended, banks trusted, and investors worshipped, had been reporting nearly 2 billion euros sitting in bank accounts in the Philippines. Those accounts didn't exist. The banks that supposedly held the money had never heard of it, and the man in charge of finding it had already disappeared. This is the story of Wirecard, a company that convinced the world it was the future of finance, while quietly becoming one of the biggest accounting frauds Europe had ever seen. By the end of this video, you'll understand exactly how a fake payments empire built on forged documents, hired actors, and a missing intelligence operative managed to fool auditors, regulators, and some of the smartest investors on Earth for the better part of 2 decades. Before we get into how they pulled it off, if you're into stories like this, hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss what's coming. To understand how Wirecard collapsed, you first need to understand how strange its beginning really was. Wirecard was founded in Germany in 1999 during the dot-com boom as a small payment processing company. It nearly went bankrupt within its first few years. Its original niche wasn't glamorous. It processed payments for pornography sites and online gambling platforms, industries most traditional banks refused to touch. In 2002, a former KPMG consultant named Markus Braun took over as CEO. Braun cultivated a specific image, a black turtleneck, wireframe glasses, and confident talk about artificial intelligence. Multiple financial journalists compared the look to Steve Jobs. Under Braun, Wirecard began an aggressive expansion. It acquired banking licenses. It processed cards for Visa and MasterCard. It bought up smaller payment companies across Asia and the Middle East. On paper, it was becoming exactly what it claimed, a global fintech powerhouse. On September 24, 2018, Wirecard achieved something remarkable. It was added to the DAX, Germany's index of the 30 most valuable public companies, replacing Commerzbank, a bank with roots stretching back to 1870. At its peak, Wirecard's market capitalization topped 24 billion euros. It was, briefly, more valuable than Deutsche Bank. The German financial establishment had a new golden child. There was just one problem. Almost nobody outside the company could explain exactly how it was making its money. The first warning signs appeared over a decade earlier. In 2008, a German shareholder association raised questions about irregularities in Wirecard's balance sheet. In 2015, the Financial Times published reporting pointing to a troubling gap in the company's stated assets versus its liabilities. Each time, Wirecard's response followed the same pattern: deny, attack, and litigate. The company and its executives repeatedly framed critics, journalists, short sellers, and analysts as saboteurs running coordinated campaigns to drive down the stock price. And remarkably, German regulators mostly believed them. The real unraveling began in January 2019, when the Financial Times published investigative reports built on internal documents and a whistleblower from inside Wirecard's own legal team. The reporting alleged that a significant portion of Wirecard's profits were not coming from real transactions at all. Instead, they were routed through a network of third-party partners in Asia, companies that process payments supposedly on Wirecard's behalf. The problem was that some of these partners barely seemed to exist. One report found that a Wirecard office in the Philippines, listed as a hub of major financial activity, had no visible staff and no real operations. Here's where the story takes its strangest turn. Instead of investigating Wirecard, Germany's financial regulator, BaFin, opened an investigation into the journalists. Short selling of Wirecard stock was temporarily banned, a protection rarely extended to any single company. For over a year, the official position was that the free press was the threat, not the company hemorrhaging credibility. Meanwhile, one man was becoming central to almost every unresolved question: the company's chief operating officer, an Austrian named Jan Marsalek. Marsalek was an unusual figure inside a publicly traded company. Colleagues described a man who moved between business meetings and reportedly murkier ventures. He ran a private office in Vienna, positioned near the Russian embassy. He was, in Braun's telling, the operational genius behind Wirecard's rapid Asian growth. He was also, investigators would later conclude, the architect of the fraud. If you're enjoying this deep dive, give this video a like. It helps more people find stories that matter. So how do you convince professional auditors trained specifically to catch this kind of thing that nearly 2 billion euros exists in bank accounts that don't? According to forensic investigators, the answer involved an elaborate physical performance. When auditors from Ernst & Young requested verification of the escrow accounts, they were shown documentation and contacts that had been fabricated, including confirmations from parties who had no real relationship with the funds. Some reports described sham office visits designed to give the appearance of active local operations. For years, this worked. Ernst & Young signed off on Wirecard's accounts every single year, including in 2019, right in the middle of the Financial Times investigation. It's worth sitting with that for a second. One of the big four global accounting firms, a firm whose entire business model is built on verifying what companies claim to be true, certified Wirecard's books as clean year after year, while the money at the center of those books may never have existed at all. By early 2020, the pressure had become impossible to contain. German prosecutors, financial journalists, and increasingly nervous banks were closing in from every direction. Wirecard commissioned KPMG to conduct an independent special audit. The special audit, released in April 2020, didn't clear Wirecard. It found the company had failed to provide adequate documentation to prove that its third-party business was genuine at all. The walls were closing in, and the people at the top knew it. On June 18, 2020, Wirecard finally admitted 1.9 billion euros, supposedly held in trust accounts at two banks in the Philippines, could not be located. The banks stated publicly that they had no record of ever holding the funds. Markus Braun resigned as CEO. Within days, he was arrested on suspicion of falsifying accounts and market manipulation. Jan Marsalek was suspended and fired. Within a day, he vanished. Investigators later reconstructed his escape from Germany into Austria, then Belarus, and finally into Russia, a country with no extradition treaty with Germany. Interpol issued a red notice. He remains one of Europe's most wanted fugitives, believed to be living under Russian protection. He has never been apprehended. On June 25th, 1 week after the missing money was revealed, Wirecard filed for insolvency. The company that had briefly been worth more than Deutsche Bank, that had displaced a 150-year-old institution on Germany's most prestigious stock index, ceased to exist as a functioning business in a matter of days. Roughly 50,000 shareholders lost a combined 24 billion euros. Thousands of employees lost their jobs virtually overnight. The fallout reshaped German financial regulation. BaFin, the regulator that had spent a year investigating journalists instead of the company they were reporting on, faced public criticism and parliamentary hearings. Ernst & Young faced lawsuits from investors. Markus Braun's criminal trial began in Munich in December 2022 and is still ongoing. One of the largest fraud trials in German post-war history. Braun denies all charges. Jan Marsalek has never faced trial. He is believed to still be living in Russia. The 1.9 billion euros has never been recovered. Most investigators believe it never existed in the first place. What makes Wirecard different isn't just the size of the number, it's how long the illusion held, and how many professional gatekeepers had every opportunity to catch it and didn't. A regulator that protected the company instead of the public, an auditor that signed off year after year, a stock market that kept pricing shares based on numbers that were never real. Wirecard wasn't just a fraud committed by a handful of executives in a boardroom. It was a fraud that an entire system, built specifically to prevent this, allowed to happen in plain sight for the better part of 2 decades. And somewhere out there, the man who orchestrated it is still free. If this story blew your mind, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next one. See you there!